Hi, I recently got an idea of building a diorama of a figurine inside a fluid. So, this video will show you how I make one. I started off cutting a length of nickel strip, then cut it in half to make it narrower in the middle. I fold the cut strip earlier so that the strip can make contact against the battery terminal. Make another bend but don't flatten it, then put them both through the slot in the battery holder. Add more strips as you see fit, because there are batteries that are somewhat shorter than usual, and this also decides how strong the holder will grip the battery. Afterwards, bend both of the strips downwards. The idea here is to somewhat lock the strip in place. I also used a small THT type switch. You can see the dimension here. Solder the electrical component before fitting them into the main case, just like in the diagram here. Put the switch slider in first, then the switch slid from inside the case. This is a tricky thing to do, but I want it to have a small footprint. Then slide the slider retainer to prevent it from flopping around. Use a hot melt glue gun to hold them in place, especially for the battery holder, switch, and a little bit on the motor itself. I swapped the motor into N20 1000 RPM 3V motor that performs more efficiently than the standard motor previously. For the propeller that's attached to the motor, inside has a total of 6 magnets. Each side has 3 magnets stacked together. The magnets dimension used in this project is 14 by 1.5 mm. Then mount them to the shaft of the motor. Make sure that the propeller don't have any friction against the main case. This part here is just a spacer or a riser so that the plastic jar won't sit on top of the magnet propeller on the motor. Now to test if everything goes well, put the battery, then slide the switch to turn it on. Here's the magnetic stirrer attached to the propeller as well. Next part will be the plastic jar itself. This one can be tricky as well, but you will get used to it. The dimension of this plastic jar is almost 10 cm in diameter. Start with having these 3 rings. These will sit at the edge of the jar, and a solid plastic that's printed as well. Align the solid plastic plates tab to the rings slot. There are 2 slots for each one of them. The solid plate will sit at the bottom slot. Then put another piece of the ring on the other tab of the solid plate. Hold them steady as you would have to somewhat force them into the jar. Squeeze the side of the jar to give room for it to go through the lid. Once the pieces are inside, squeeze them through the jar so that they won't fall apart. Then add the final piece to the ring to the assembly. When the final piece of the ring has been put together, slowly push the whole 3D printed parts parallel to the shape of the jar slowly. You will need multiple tries on this one. Once they are all inside, you will want them to be at the lip. To do so, you slowly pull the ring, but be very careful as the pieces could crumble and you have to start over from the previous steps again. With this, we will be able to install the final upper plate. Once they are at the lip, squeeze the jar to grip the pieces. Take the upper plate and align the tab to the upper slot of the ring earlier. This one perhaps the trickiest of all because you will need a tool to pull the tab should they get stuck inside. I highly recommend having a tweezer to do this. They should be somewhat springy if all the tabs are inside, and that's good. And the final piece, the magnetic stirrer, the maximum diameter for the stirrer that you can use is 9 to 10 mm, and I highly recommend either using oval or pivot type. This offers the least resistance when spinning. Cylinders and alike are generally bad. To put it inside, push one of the thin outer ring of the upper plate, then slide the stirrer through it. If you want to take it out, the process should be quite similar, though it would be tricky to do. At this point, you can push it back down if you don't plan to add any figurine inside, but if you do, let it stay at the lid first. This part is adding the figurine into the jar. First, align the figurine's base with the printed base. This is to mark where you're going to drill holes on the figurine's base. These holes will be used to tie them down together. When aligning, make sure there's enough space for the stirrer in the lower compartment. I drilled 6 holes, 2 for each side. However, it is up to you how do you want to drill yours. Once you drill the needed holes, we're going to tie them down. I am using cable ties. Before inserting the cable ties through, I recommend bending the tip of the cable ties to look like a hook first. This is to make it easier to grab the tip of the cable tie. Tie the base together with the farthest position so that the stirrer won't be obstructed later on. I have to be honest, this is the most hardest part. As an alternative, you can take out the printed grill and tie the base together, then put back the grill into the ring inside the jar. Cut the excess cable tie, then put the figurine on its base. This process is hard as well because the figurine's mounting position doesn't align that perfectly with the base. So I have to somewhat force it. This is perhaps where you're going to glue the figurine onto its base using super glue so that it won't ever come off from the base anymore. We are going to push the whole thing back down. Be careful that the upper grill can be dislodged quite easily. When adding water, try to make sure to push the air bubbles out of the bottom portion. This will prevent from the whole base from slowly rising. I didn't show the process here because I don't like to work with fluids on my small workspace, nor I have the space to film the process either. Remember on the clip during the assembly, I stated that you may use the upper plate or grill to use at the bottom as well. This is to eliminate any potential of air bubbles inside and easier management of course. So you can use both upper plate or grill on both parts without ever using the solid plate. With everything inside, including the water without any bubbles, time to add mica powder with your desired color. To achieve a good ratio between the effect and the visibility of the figurine, put a small amount of mica powder slowly and stir to break the powder from clumping together. I tried to add generic glitters into the system, but didn't work. The glitter stays only at the surface of the water. I added a bit of pearl white into the water to give some boost into the effect. Your mileage may vary depending on the color used. I changed the color to a more appropriate diorama by draining all the water. I used pearl white, gold, and yellow gold, all three with a very conservative amount. Why I chose this color? It is a diorama of Spider-Man fighting against Sandman. I hope you guys had a good time building one of these as well as watching the video. Have a good day, thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.